Hey BookTube, I'm the Book Mage, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another reading vlog. So this is going to be a pretty focused one book reading vlog, and it is going to be the Goth Girl Book Club Book of the Month. And I have about 5 days to read this, or a bit less actually. Next Friday is our book meeting and I only have until then to finish reading this book. Hopefully this is going to be a pretty focused, pretty succinct kind of vlog. The book I'm going to be reading in this video is Sky of Fire by Madeline Carr. So this book was chosen for the Girls at Book Club by my friend Sarah. This was our like Page and Wick book. March or April, I forget which month we get the box in, but this is the most recent Page and Wick book. So my friend Sarah picked it up and read it right away, and it's now like her new favourite book, to the point where she's like in the author's DMs asking like just so many questions about the book and the characters, and like sending the author memes about their own characters. Apparently this book has an absolute chokehold on my friend. I therefore promised that when I read this book I would film it and vlog it, sort of like I did when she asked me to read Fourth Wing, and also like I did for a couple of our other book club books. So this is the book that I'm going to be reading in this vlog. I am not going to be giving any sort of spoilers, but I am going to be giving my opinion, and I'll probably like talk a little bit about like the introductory events of the book, if there's anything to comment on, but I won't include spoilers. So what I understand about this is I think it's multi-perspective. I'm going to really quickly read the synopsis just so that like we're all up to speed. So, exiled from her home, Aaliyah, a half-witch, half-fae, conceals a deadly magic in her father's sun-drenched empire. Seeking freedom from the shackles of royal life, her fae half-sister Sarah leads them to the free city of Nazra. When rebellion strikes, their world is shattered. Amid the chaos, the bearer of death lurks in the shadows, bound to kill for his cruel king. His job is simple: assassinate the witch Aaliyah Feralis. But an unforeseen, rogue magic has other plans. After accidentally binding her life to the fae assassin who tried to kill her, Aaliyah must survive as a new recruit in the brutal guild of Cruor. Meanwhile, Sarah searches for refuge and freedom in the most prestigious siren house in Varian, where beauty is both addictive and deceiving. As the sisters face separate paths, their brother Adrian, born and raised to be emperor, will do anything to find them, including venture into the rebellion. As a greater evil emerges, only the fates will decide who lives and who dies. So it's a multi-perspective fantasy following like multiple members of the same family. I'm guessing that romance is going to be like prominent in this, but as I said when I unboxed this, I feel like there's enough other intriguing stuff going on that I might actually end up liking this. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, then stick with me, because I'm gonna be reading this book and I would love it if you would join me.
3 days later.
It's Thursday. It's Thursday and I haven't read any of this book. I've had so much to do, and I still have so much to do, and I have to read this because I have to get on a bus at 3 PM tomorrow to go to book club to talk about this book. I don't know how long this is. I think it's like about like 500 pages, which is not bad, but I have work. I'm not saying I make great choices. To be fair, for me, it wasn't really a choice. That is what happened. That is what happened. So I will now actually go and actually start it and actually read it because I have no choice. Okay, hello. So, excuse how rough I look. I am just shy of about like 100 pages. So far, the basic kind of setup for this book is that it's multi-perspective and you're following 3 different members of this one household. Like the royal lineage, the main, like main character is like the bastard, like half sibling. You're also following her sister and like their brother who is like the heir to the... I think sometimes it's referred to as a kingdom, but their father is an emperor because they're visiting like a neighbouring king who I guess is not in their empire, unless maybe their father is the empire and this king is like a king within there. I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure of like the exact like logistical politics of this world, but there is a nice handy map. So I think this country at the bottom is the one where they're from, and they've come to this city up here. The 2 sisters, or half-sisters, went to this other, like just across the border for like basically like a little girls' holiday, you know. I think it's one of their birthdays. I literally can't remember. I've just read it. And while they're in this city, there's like a mass uprising. So there are Fae, which all the ruling class is Fae, so like the royal family and everything, they're all Fae. And the half-sister is half Fae. Humans are treated like awful. They're just treated like dirt. They're basically slaves. If they so much as like look at a Fae wrong or like interact with them in a way that is not the done thing, like just talking to them, I guess, they can just be killed for that. So the humans have done an uprising, and that means that there were a lot of like explosions, a lot of fighting, a lot of killing, a lot of murders, and these two sisters got separated, and the main girl, the half Fae, who has weird blood magic, whose name is Aaliyah, she's ended up, she was getting tracked by an assassin, and right before this uprising happened, she accidentally like bonded them, like soul bonded them, blood bonded them together. So she's now being taken back to his assassin's guild. Her fully Fae sister, Sarah, has ended up in like, I don't know what they're called in this world, like a pleasure house. Their brother, Adrian, back at home, he's found out about this, so I think he's now going to go and look for his sisters. It is written in first person, which I'm not a fan of, but given that it's from like each of their here's the thing, it's written from each of their POVs, which is fine. It has the name at the top of like who is speaking, of like whose POV the chapter is from. I wish there was a bit more like character flavour in the narration. I feel like kind of giving it a pass for that, because 3 of the 4 POV characters are siblings who have like grown up together, so I feel like they might all have similar kind of like narrative voices. I feel like that totally makes sense. The other one is the assassin guy, but I'm like, I say this in a way because like I know this is not for me. What I will say is, from the way this book is presenting itself, especially like with this love interest and the fact that they've got like this, like they clearly don't like each other. He tried to kill her when they met, but now they're bonded, so now they have to work together, and like, you know, he has to keep her alive, and they clearly don't like each other, but they're gonna have sassy back and forth, and oh, they're gonna get into all these, like, they have to be close, but they're gonna get into like all these like slightly semi-sexy like awkward situations. It's that. I'm not invested so far. I think I'm most interested to know what's going to happen to Sarah. She ended up running into a siren as she was like escaping, and they escaped together, so that's why she's in this. I think the word I was looking for earlier is brothel. I just feel like her POV has more potential for it. Like, I know where Aaliyah's POV is going. She's gonna go be an assassin, there's gonna be like quippy back and forth love interest stuff, and like, it's fine. I just know where we're going with that, and Adrian is obviously off to find his sister, but he so far has only had 1 chapter, so I'm not really that invested. But I like Sarah's chapters, I think. Anyway, that's kind of like the basic setup, and we've not progressed much further than that, to be honest. I will check in, wish me luck, because like, I feel like I'm going to be up late tonight. I have so much work to do, so yeah, this is also like my friend's like new favourite book, so no pressure. Let me see how far I can get. Hey BookTube! So I did finish reading Sky of Fire by Madeline Carr, and I finished this like pretty much just before my lunch break on Friday, so kind of cutting it close, just hours to spare. I think I wasn't the last person to finish reading it though. So before I get into like my non-spoilery kind of discussion and opinions of this book, I kind of want to wrap up at the beginning by saying that like I think my overall rating for this is going to be like around about a 3 stars, maybe like a 3.25. I can appreciate what the book's doing. I think my main disconnect is just that I know this book isn't written for me, it's written for a different kind of reader, and both of my 2 friends loved it. Like, they stayed up, they devoured it. One of the girls from book club has read this twice, so I was definitely the outlier, but I could kind of see that coming. I'm just more of a grimdark adult high fantasy kind of girly. This leans way more, it is adult because of some of the content in the book, but it kind of hits the same level of adult as like Throne of Glass and like Fourth Wing, in that it's very much tailored for like a typical YA audience, but just with the addition of just like some slightly more adult themes in there. I don't think there's much to discuss in terms of like spice level. I feel like this is very much more like a slow burn kind of thing. It's definitely the kind of book that I would absolutely recommend to people that I feel like fit like the, I don't want to say niche, because I feel this book should be so popular on Book Talk, to be honest. I feel like if this were traditionally published, if this had been like a Fairy Loot Book of the Month or something, it would be so incredibly hyped on Book Talk. I feel like it hits kind of all of those things that like all those sort of typical Book Talk books sort of hit. So this is definitely for fans of things like Sarah J Maas and Fourth Wing. It's hard to kind of compare it because at the same time this is self-published, and I do kind of judge self-published books a little bit more. I'm a bit more lenient in it. So like I do feel like this had maybe like a couple issues with pacing and like chapter order, which I'll get into, but again, that's the kind of thing where if you had like a whole team of like if you were getting like traditionally published, those sort of things might come back in feedback. The book needs some editing, but I feel like if you enjoy this kind of content, you're not going to care. For me, it's things like there are a lot of like incorrect word choices, like bellowing instead of billowing, just little things like that. There were quite a few, but like it's not the kind of thing that I'm going to really judge an indie author on. If it comes up in a trad published book, I will side-eye it, but like in terms of pacing, it's things where because you have these four different POV characters, but really there's 3 different perspectives because 2 of these characters are like pretty much always in the same space. You have these 3 different narratives going on, and they all move at a different timeline. Sometimes you'll come back to like character A, and I don't know, at least several days or maybe several weeks, depending on what they're doing, and then you flash back to like character C, and it's still the same day for them. Like sometimes their scene will end, and then 5 chapters later, their next scene begins, but it's exactly where the last scene left off with no time having passed for them, but yet days or weeks have passed in the chapters in between for characters like A and B. So there's little things like that that kind of threw me a little bit. And the only other thing, and all 3 of us did notice this, and it's kind of like my last, it's not even really a gripe, I just didn't realise it was meant to be a thing. Right towards the end of this book, there is, I think it's supposed to be like a reveal. So one of the, you don't ever meet this character on the page, but you learn something. I guess it's kind of like world building, like lore about this world. You learn this thing about this person that you've like heard about in like the lore, the world building, and it kind of reveals who this person is. And I'm not joking, I thought that they revealed this in like the first couple of chapters. I thought it was said explicitly on the page. I've been back and I've checked and it's not, but the way that it's worded, every single one of us thought that we knew this, like the reader was supposed to know it, and we all thought that all of the characters kind of knew it. Like we thought that the main girl, Aaliyah, had basically been told this information to her face and that she knew it, but way at the end of the book, there's a reveal, and it's a bit weird. And it's also the first time that character has ever been mentioned by name. Like they've never been given a name before, but the name is dropped into the sentence as though you're expected to know who that is. And it's only through context clues that you know who it is, but it's like, why are we giving them? Anyway, that's it. That was the only other thing. Other than that though, I do want to say, like, if you look at how much I have like a whole like 2-hour video on how much I could rip into like Fourth Wing, and there's like a whole thing about Feybound. So there are a lot of books maybe like of a similar genre to this that I can find a lot to complain about. I really can't find a lot to complain about this. It's just not my thing. While I personally rate everything based on enjoyment, and this was just kind of like an average sort of experience for me, I know that my friends who like this were absolutely in a chokehold by this book. Like they could not get over how much like they couldn't put it down. One of the girls from book club was saying that she was like reading this and just like kicking her feet and sort of giggling at some of like the interactions, and that sort of stuff does not get me. It doesn't affect me. I don't know, I feel like this definitely has an audience. Mostly well written and entertaining, and I was right about the fact that there is enough other stuff going on, like aside from the romance. I feel like this is enjoyable even if you don't particularly like the romance stuff, but I think if you are like a romance girly, then you're definitely going to get a lot more out of this than I did. I will say actually, the only other thing I'm not sure about, and this isn't a spoiler because it's kind of in the synopsis that there's this uprising. So the humans who have been treated like dirt, like slaves, like the humans are always described as having like sunken cheeks, and like they're like starving to death and they're filthy, and all their weapons in this uprising are like makeshift weapons. So it's kind of like, so I should definitely be on the side of the humans because they've been treated in a very inhumane way. They've been treated as though they're like less than animals basically by the Fae, who are this like cruel elitist ruling class. So you're clearly not on the side of the Fae, and the book does go out of its way to kind of make sure that the main characters, like the sisters in particular, one of the sisters is kind of having a bit of a tryst, a bit of a fling with a mortal, so it's kind of like, oh well, you know, that she's probably not like racist. And the half Fae sister, I think she's half human, half Fae. I mean, she's half witch, but like I don't know if witches are human or a separate thing entirely, I'm not entirely sure. But she has like, in one of the very opening chapters, like a sympathetic interaction with a human, so it's kind of like, okay, so we're supposed to clearly be sympathetic to humankind, given that all readers of this book are in fact human also. Kind of goes without saying. In some of the chapters, like, obviously because the humans are rising up against the Fae, and 3 of the POV characters that are all from this, they're from the royal lineage basically. You obviously want the main characters to be safe because they're your POV characters, you're meant to like them, and the way the humans are portrayed is like, they're all stupid, they're all cruel, they're all like almost evil. Like it's very much like they want revenge, they want to get their own back, but they're going to commit atrocities to enact their vengeance, I suppose. On the one hand, I'm totally on their side for wanting to rise up against their oppressive master race of the Fae, I guess, because it's like they are all starving and they are being treated like dirt and like dogs and they are being killed. If that's the case, surely I should be on their side because, as they say, eat the rich. You know, maybe when you leave the human populace to literally starve, and if they complain about it, you'll beat them and kill them. I'm kind of on their side about it. But anytime one of the POV characters interacts with humans, you're very clearly meant to really hate any human character in this. I totally understand that the uprising is just kind of like the inciting event of this book and the backdrop for some of like the drama for the characters. So I totally understand that the nature of this story and like the kind of story that it's trying to tell and like the tropes it's trying to follow very much do not expect its readers to look into like the political situation that much. Like the book does not expect you to, all capital letters, think about it. You know? The book does not expect you to reflect on the situation. I find it so hard to sympathize with, especially in some of the POV sections. It's like the characters are kind of making comments about like, oh, if one of the humans has like a sword, they're like, yeah, and it's disgusting because they stole that sword from a Fae who they killed. And it's like, yeah, but they killed them because they themselves were being starved and killed. Every time in the actual narrative, every time in the actual story, in the events, that anyone interacts with a human character, they are just the absolute worst. And it's like, I feel like because the book wants us to like the main characters, every human character, because all the humans dislike the Fae, every single human character that's part of this uprising is an antagonist, is a bad guy, and they're portrayed in the most like unsympathetic way. I'm not entirely sure which side of this political situation I'm meant to be on. I don't know if it's going somewhere in book 2. I don't know if we're gonna like actually, because I feel like the way that it's going, like you're also not necessarily meant to like the Fae ruling class, like you're not meant to agree with the royal children's like emperor father, but it's just this weird, it's kind of like this weird centrist middle ground where it's kind of like, I'm sure at some point it makes a comment about like, well, I totally agree that the humans might want to rise up against the Fae who have been abusing them for however many years they've been doing this. But it's something along the lines of, you know, there are other ways to do it that aren't violent. And I'm like, well, while I do totally appreciate that in a perfect world, just asking for more rights would get you more rights, it literally does not work that way. I don't know, I feel like when you starve and beat peasants for so long, if they rise up and kill you and take your stuff and take it for themselves, I feel like saying, oh yeah, but I wish they'd done it without violence, or I wish they'd done it in like a peaceful way. My guy, you were killing them if they looked at you wrong. I don't know what you want me to do. I want book 2 to go somewhere with this. I say that like I'm gonna read it. I might read book 2. I assume we might get more into the politics of the world at a later date. Just how it's presented in this book is very confusing to me in a way that seems so oversimplified. It kind of contradicts itself, and I'm not sure which side we're meant to be on, and that's kind of my only other gripe. But other than that, I'm not expecting it to go into that much detail. There were definitely parts of this book where I'm like, I'm not 100% sure where we stand. I think the main thing is, main character's good, anyone else, just bad. And that's kind of like the stance it takes. That was the only other thing for me that was kind of hard to overlook, and that I just didn't really get. I feel like I don't want this to go on for too long, and I feel like there wasn't very much vlog to this vlog, but I definitely think that more people would like this. And I feel like if you're looking for something that's kind of along the same vein as like Throne of Glass, like Sarah J Maas style, or like Fourth Wing, but so much better written than Fourth Wing. So yeah, while I maybe only gave this like a 3 stars, maybe like a 3 and a little bit. I totally get that that's just my personal taste. This is definitely somebody else's fave, right? Like, I think both of the other girls gave this a 5 star. I did manage to like power binge my way through this, and I think this book is very bingeable. I know I had an obligation to read it, but I feel like if this is your kind of thing, it is pacey and probably quite compelling if you're like invested in those sorts of stories. So that's kind of like my final wrap-up rating of this book. So I guess let me know if any of you have heard of this before or are possibly thinking of picking it up. If you made it through the whole video, leave me a little fire flame emoji, seeing as one of the sisters comes from a bloodline of fire magic users. If any of you have already read this, I would be really interested to know what you thought and like if we have the same kind of opinion. Otherwise, that is about it from me. I'm gonna go before like the light dies anymore and messes with the white balance, because I feel like I'm about to blend in with this background. So I'm gonna go, but thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye!